We're about to start. Just give it a few seconds, but yeah. I believe we are now live.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and apologies for the delay. As usual, technical difficulties. So welcome, everyone, on Zoom and to the Berkeley Tenants Convention. I'm Paola Laverde, Chair of the Tenants Union and a terming out Berkeley Rent Board Commissioner. Someone here tonight will be replacing me. Every election season since 1994, a coalition of Berkeley community and political organizations have come together to elect a pro-tenant slate for the open seats on the rent board in the November election. This year's coalition brings together some familiar and some new community organizations to vet the candidates in this Berkeley time-honored grassroots process. The coalition members are the Berkeley Tenants Union, Berkeley Citizens Action, Center for Independent Living, East Bay Democratic Socialists of America, Friends of Alaline, Green Panthers, Green Party of Alameda County, Healthy Black Families, Our Revolution East Bay, SEIU 1021, Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club, and the Young Democratic Socialists of America, UC Berkeley. The coalition would like to acknowledge and thank the Democratic Socialists of America for providing the coalition for the professional Zoom account for the candidate interviews and tonight's convention. Berkeley has been electing a rent board, electing the rent board commissioner since 1984. And we would like to acknowledge all the current and former rent board commissioners or other elected officials on the Zoom event right now. I'm going to call your name. And if I haven't called your name, can you please raise your hand in the chat? So currently we have on the line or on our Zoom meeting is Rent Board Commissioner Andy Kelly, former Commissioner Asa Dodsworth, former Commissioner Christina Murphy, Rent Board Commissioner James Chang, Commissioner and former Chair myself, Paola, Commissioner Igor Tregub, Peralta Trustee Diana Delphin Polk, former Mayor Gus Newport, Mayor and former Rent Board Commissioner Jesse Arreguin, Commissioner John Solosky, former Commissioner Mark Janowitz, former Commissioner Pamela Webster, Vice Chair Solly Alpert, Commissioner Xavier Johnson, Commissioner Mari Mendonca, I'm sorry. Former Commissioner Richard Elgin, who was on the very first Rent Board board. And if I missed anyone else, can you please raise your hand? Oh, hold on, it looks like we have another name. Let's see if I've missed anybody.
Judy
Oh, yes.
Is also.
Judy Ann, and I don't know your last name. Judy Ann, I'm so sorry.
Judy Ann Alberti. And
Judy Ann Alberti, go ahead.
Of course, we also have Chair Leah Simon Weisberg.
Thank you very much. Yes, current chair. Okay, thank you. And I want to thank all of you for your service, because public service is public service and it takes time and it actually takes energy. So thank you, everybody. So this year, the coalition wants to, make sure that the community input is really important. So tonight, the audience is being asked to submit questions for the Q&A portion of the convention. So submit your questions in the Q&A function located at the bottom of the screen. And the questions must be directed to all the candidates and not just to certain individuals. I'm now going to toss to DSA Representative Matthew Lewis, who will introduce the evening's first special guest, former Berkeley Mayor Gus Newport. Go ahead, Matthew.
All right. Can folks hear me? Okay, it looks like it's working. Great. Good evening, everyone. In addition to my role as Secretary of the Berkeley Tenants Union, I'm also an incoming steering committee member of East Bay DSA, the local chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, the country's largest socialist organization. In 1999, former Berkeley Mayor Gus Newport was appointed as an honorary chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, a position he served in until 2017, when the position was dissolved as part of a restructuring to reflect the organization's massive post-2016 growth. It really is my honor on behalf of DSA and particularly as an incoming steering committee member to introduce Mayor Gus Newport. I honestly don't know where to begin. I wasn't even alive when Gus was mayor, but it was under his tenure, for instance, that we got our elected rent board here in Berkeley, one of only two cities in the entire country with an elected rent board, and one of only six cities in California that had vacancy control. That was truly an accomplishment that happened under Gus's tenure, and it's only one of the many tenures, things accomplished under Gus's tenure. But I chose to focus on that because it's so most connected. It truly is an honor to have Gus, and I'll say it was an honor that Gus served as honorary chair of DSA. Thank you, Gus, so much for being here. Thank you for everything you've done, both in Berkeley and beyond. So yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce Gus Newport as our first keynote speaker.
Yes, good evening. I want to commend the Rent Board and all the people who are participating on this call. Rent control is so essential, especially in a place like the Bay Area with the cost of living at such and such whatever it is. We passed the Rent Board when I was mayor of Berkeley. I was mayor from 1979 to 1986. Our rent control went all the way to the Supreme Court when we passed rent control based on CPI 1 year, and that year it came out to be 1%. Most of the landlords and even Alameda County filed a suit against us, and we went and filed suit and went all the way to the Supreme Court. Lawrence Tribe, who was from the law school at Harvard University, who knew the Supreme Court better than anybody in the U.S., came out to visit us and took the case on pro bono. And we won it. I must say now, especially going 2 years past this pandemic due to COVID-19, et cetera, whatever else, the cost of living, the economy, et cetera, and everything else, rent control is so absolutely essential. And I commend all you people, the city council, the rent board, people from various organizations, whatever else, for the work you're doing. I just want to say, if it can't be done in Berkeley, it can't be done. So we're counting on y'all. Do the best job and make it work so that people who have limited income and whatever else can still afford to live in a city where the cost of living is extremely, extremely high. I always knew it was just sort of a bedroom community. It has the university, et cetera, and everything else. But playing and doing the right kinds of things from a community standpoint, what we call, from Martin Luther King, the beloved community, we can make it work. So take off, y'all. I look forward to what you're doing. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Gus, very much. And yes, we got to take off. Now we go to former Rent Board Commissioner and current BTU member, Igor Traeger.
I just want to make one quick announcement. Sorry. Can someone announce how to turn closed captioning on?
It's enabled, Matthew. Okay, so now I go to former Rent Board Commissioner and current BTU member, Igor Traeger.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. In case you are wondering how to turn on the live transcript, you should see on the bottom right of your screen a button that says live transcript. If you are on a computer, click on that, and you have a choice to either show subtitles or view the full transcript. So click on that. There'll be a radio, a menu that will come up, and we are definitely happy to provide that for you today for accessibility. If you have any questions on how to use that, please put that in Q&A, and we will work with you to make that happen. It is now a true pleasure to introduce someone who is a longtime tenant activist who Unfortunately for us, but fortunately for the Oakland community, just recently moved out of Berkeley to Oakland, Lupe Arreola has been advocating for tenants for more than 20 years. Over 3 years, has been meeting Tenants Together, a statewide coalition of local tenant organizations. Berkeley Tenants Union is a proud member of it, dedicated to defending and advancing the rights of California tenants to safe, decent, and affordable housing. She joins us tonight to speak about the state of tenant rights statewide. Thank you so much for joining us, Lupe.
Thank you so much for having me, Igor, and the Berkeley Tenants Union, as well as the Berkeley Rent Board. Thank you guys so much for having me here. Today's actually one of my last nights in my Berkeley apartment, so it's very fitting that I'm getting to talk to all of you today. So first of all, again, my name is Lupe Arreola. I'm the Executive Director for Tenants Together. And I've been very lucky to have been leading Tenants Together now for a little bit over 3 years. You know, as we know, it's been many, it's been decades of tough years, right? For tenants all around this country, hundreds of years, it's been tough for tenants all around the world. And, but especially the last few years, I would say definitely the last 2.5 years, it's been especially rough for tenants. Right before, the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, we were trying to focus on really trying to push for tenant rights at the state level, through SB 529, which was a right to organize, which is one of the pieces of legislation that Tenants Together was sponsoring, that unfortunately did not make it out of the Senate due to one vote, even though 3 Democrats abstained. We're still pretty bitter about that. Right before the pandemic, also AB 1482 passed, which actually provided very basic rent cap and a basic just cause provisions for a lot of tenants around the state. And while that was a good step forward, before we could even really get to the effort of implementation and enforcement, we were unfortunately hit with COVID-19, and it really shifted so much of our work towards eviction prevention. It shifted so much of our work towards, keeping folks in their homes while millions of people lost their jobs. It shifted so much of our work onto like this urgency phase, especially as the legislature kept passing different packages of legislation at the state level to extend some protections, but not enough. It really derailed us for the last couple of years. I really do feel that right now is kind of one of the first years in recent history where I really feel that we as a tenant movement can really begin to look forward again. I'm really excited about trying to bring new proposals again at the state level that are not directly related to COVID, but that are related to the impacts and the fallout and the economic fallout of this pandemic, including, addressing the issues of debt, which a lot of tenants, millions of tenants around the state are still saddled with rent debt that was incurred during the pandemic. We want to address also retaliation again. We're very excited to see that San Francisco recently passed legislation around retaliation and the right to organize. And we want to definitely ensure that that continues to be a pattern throughout the state and at the state level. We're also looking at how do we close the loopholes in AB 1482, which, we're very fortunate in Berkeley, of course, because of the work that all you have done, that a lot of these loopholes are already closed, but around the state, there's a lot of loopholes in AB 1482 that are allowing, Ellis Act-like evictions to move forward and evictions due to renovation and substantial rehab. They would never be allowed here in the city, right? It would never be allowed in Berkeley, but folks in Fresno, folks in Concord and other areas are having to deal with these evictions. So I think for us right now, it is, we're looking, again, closing the loopholes that are allowing unjust evictions to still move forward, even though there's been some basic protections at the state level that passed. Also, like I said, protection for tenants who want to organize and prevent retaliation, and protect the tenant's right to organize in their home, as well as, just as they are able to do at their job, that they can also organize in their home and with their neighbors. Also, there's been a lot of discussions about social housing, and whereas for us right now, we're having conversations with our member orgs about what is social housing, what does that mean? What does it mean in terms of decommodifying housing and decommodifying land, so that we can have long-term sustainable housing that is below market and is not going to be, sold at the whim of the market. And then also for us, it's really, how are we using the tools at our disposal to try to get the information to tenants out as fast as possible, as far as possible, and as thoroughly as possible. Unfortunately, this pandemic taught us a lot of lessons, which is that we need to be able to reach people in several ways. So like we're using text tools, we're using a legal FAQ, which is like where people can go to look for rules in their county. We've been using letter templates. We've been trying to use every tool at our disposal to reach as many people as possible, because we know that every day that passes is another day that somebody could leave their home because they don't understand their rights and because they're being intimidated, and we don't want that to happen. So with that, I'm just, again, so proud to have been a Berkeley resident, at least for this short time, but also, as an Oakland resident, I'm still going to continue fighting for these rights for folks in Berkeley, for folks in Oakland, for folks and anywhere in the state. And I'm just very proud to be able to do that. And just want to thank every single one of you for all the work that you put in to not just maintain the rights here in Berkeley, but to keep pushing that letter and keep pushing the envelope, as I say, keep pushing it forward, because what Berkeley does, other cities look at, and other cities look at for inspiration, and look to as possible examples of what is possible in other cities. And so if you had told me that 10 years ago that we would have tenant unions in Downey, that we would have tenant unions in Concord and other places, I would have been like, I hope so. But now that's a reality, right? So it really does tell us about how much is actually possible with the work that you all are doing and the work that we're all doing across the state. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Lupe. And good luck in Oakland.
Thanks.
And so with that, it's a perfect segue to our next speaker this evening, and it's our keynote speaker, is Rent Board Chair Leah Simon Weisberg. And Leah was elected to the slate was reelected to the slate and the Rent Board in 2020. Tonight, we give Chair Simon Weisberg the floor to speak about the accomplishments of the Rent Board over the past 2 years. Chair?
Right. Well, it's really an honor to be here, and I have such a profound respect, not only for the institution of the Berkeley Rent Board and all the the paths that it created, for not only the tenants living in Berkeley, but also the tenants living across the state, and frankly across the country. The last 2 years, I feel like I want to say it's been the best of times and has been the worst of times. I think that we never would have expected. I never, for those of, I am actually a rent control baby. I, was born in April of 1971 and was taken to some of the meetings in 71 and 72 here in Berkeley as a little baby. So I really am the physical age of our dear ordinance. And it has an ordinance that has been evolved. And, I'm a tenant attorney, and it has been, it is always just an intellectual feat. The fact that we were able to defend it. I also am very, very concerned, and have been for over the last year, that I have no control over my body anymore, that the Supreme Court, while it has said consistently that everything in our ordinance is lawful, we could lose that. And while we have so much right now, and I'm going to share with you a lot of what's happened in the last 2 years, the courts are failing us. and obviously those of us who have been tenant attorneys, we've known that the courts have been failing us, and they've been failing us, for decades as tenants, as the bias around property rights, the bias towards wealth. But it also is important to remember that throughout this has been the movement that has propelled all of this, and that we know that while Brown versus Board of Education may have been, a moment in time that shifted a tiny bit, there was a mass movement before it, and a mass movement that has continued pushing us forward. And so just like every time we pass a protection, capitalism finds another way to try and circumvent our stability, we have to keep fighting. And we've always known this. And as we may be fearing that the Supreme Court, the institution of the Supreme Court has now, is completely bankrupt. The thing that we have to sit with and know is that none of what we have was accomplished just one day in a courtroom. It was always accomplished after so many people fought day in and day out, and those movements continue. We have many of those leaders that brought us at the beginning of the movement, people who in the middle of the first 25 years, and those now. And so I'm just so thankful that I get to live in this community, that we will all continue to come together, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's an assault on our rights to choose and our abilities to be able to live in safe, affordable, and dignified housing. I really feel that the board over the last 2 years has just been such a pleasure to work with. We have come together, and I don't know if it was because of the pandemic or just we are this group that has gelled in such a productive way. And we had not only the challenge of the pandemic that we had to work through, but we also saw the retirement of our prior executive director and went through the process of hiring a new director in the middle of the pandemic. Our staff just did a remarkable job during the pandemic. We didn't miss a beat. Our offices were actually never closed for services. They were physically closed to people. We did remote, but tenants and landlords continued to receive services every single week during the pandemic. And I really am so thankful for the level of commitment that our staff continually showed. One of the really particularly profound things we did in the last 2 years is we adopted a land acknowledgement. I really want to thank Commissioner Pablo Verde for working on that project. We read it at each committee, each commission meeting, and it really means a lot. It is the beginning of the discrimination in our state, and I think it's an important part of our history that we have to remember on a daily basis. So we hopefully can do a better job going forward. Our tenant survey is about to come out. We had some delays because of the pandemic, but our outreach committee just continue to push on that. And it's going to be really important. It's a survey that's done every 10 years, really helps us understand the needs and what tenants are facing, so we can ensure that what we're doing is really making a difference. We also expanded our rent registry. That may sound very administrative, but we will now know the data on every unit, including new construction. When we are we want to make sure that the policies we're passing are protecting tenants. And so having that, and we are the first to do it. And I think as Mayor Newport said earlier, what Berkeley does, others follow. I think that, having the extended rent registry, and I know that many cities regularly work with our staff to figure out how to do it in their community. We are about to, we've been working on the 4x4 committee. We've had a very active 4x4 committee the last 2 years. And just really thankful to all of the council members on that committee, as well as our commissioners. And we are about to introduce a ballot measure amendment that has several things that are going to make, I believe, a big difference in our community. One has come on there through the leadership of Commissioner Xavier Johnson, which will make it, people's ability to live in community and in family in a much more inclusive way. The way, who you're allowed to live with has been very restrictive and not very reflective of not only that many people live with other adults, but that families can look very different. And so I'm really happy that we are adding that. The other is we're extending just cause to all of our tenants here in Berkeley. We still have some exceptions. While we think of our ordinance as being very robust, there have been some, as far as I'm concerned, nagging loopholes that we have left here that frankly are an embarrassment. And I'm really glad that we now finally have had the courage, and at least on the 4x4, we have the support, and I'm hoping that the full council will support that we extend just cause to everyone. I think during, obviously we also need to get credit for the collaboration between the Rent Board and council, and particularly Mayor Jesse Arguin's leadership at the beginning of the pandemic, pushing quickly, immediately. We passed the first moratorium on evictions here in Berkeley. And it was that collaboration that really made a difference. And having a mayor that had previously been the chair of the Berkeley Rent Board. Not only was it the first, it still remains to be the strongest one in the state, again, leaders. And many of the other rent control jurisdictions followed quickly. And you can see on a daily basis what a difference it made. Almost no one has been evicted in Berkeley during the pandemic. In contrast to Antioch, we had 250 just in the first year of the pandemic. So really those things made a difference, and that, paying attention to the needs of tenants acting so quickly. The Rent Board obviously enforced all of those protections and did it in affirmatively. Tenants would call, getting notices, they would pay it, and we had a lot of landlords at the beginning that weren't following the law or trying to skirt around it. And we passed regulations to make sure that when they were creating these things of, oh, we're going to lower the rent now, you're going to pay this. And, there are all kinds of jumbled ways of trying to get people to come in thinking they're paying less. And we jumped on it immediately. And that, was just really important pieces. Many other things that we did. One other thing I do want to highlight is that we commissioned a report to talk about and to explore and to research what the impacts are going to be of all of the upzoning. We have been in a period where everyone in this country and this state has acknowledged that we are in a huge housing crisis, but many people still want to rely on supply and demand, as the problem and the solution. We are now have much more dense housing under our zoning, and we are looking at ways that they're going to be doing that more. And the Rent Board wanted to make sure we had the tools and a deep understanding of what that could look like. And so we were able to commission a really, I think, helpful report. And I really want to encourage everyone to go to the Rent Board website to check that out for yourself. And we hope people can continue to use it as a resource. One of the last points I want to comment on is that we took a very difficult, we spoke out and took a stand on evictions that were pending of Palestinian families living in Jerusalem. And it was another one of these moments where not everyone on the Rent Board agreed necessarily. It was a very, very contentious, we had many outsiders calling in, but we had a wonderful hearing that night with incredible support from Palestinians, Jewish Americans who live in Berkeley. And I think it really showed again the absolute best of Berkeley. And again, it was another moment where the board itself, whether we all agreed or not, was incredibly respectful and showed great honor to the democratic process. I want to just thank the folks that I ran with the last time I ran, Dominique Walker, Mari Mendonça, Xavier Johnson, and Andy Kelly. I thank you so much for having done this process with me and the election that will follow. And I want to I'm super excited to see the next slate. And thank you again for inviting me to speak and for keeping this amazing institution alive.
Thank you very much. I think you might hear her, my kitty in the background, also howling in approval. Thank you. Okay, so before we go to the candidates, we want to do one sort of housekeeping to make sure that everybody understands how this ballot process will go. And this is really important, so we want to make sure that the participants here understand. So I'm going to pass the mic over to DSA Representative Matthew Lewis to talk about this year's convention election process. Take it away, Matthew.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much, Paula. I just wanted to say it was an honor to introduce Gus Newport, Berkeley's most recent progressive mayor. Everybody who registered for the convention will have received, had to basically check a box acknowledging this, but I suspect some people have forgotten or didn't read it, or they may have been sent the link by somebody else. So we want to go over this very clearly. First off, registering for this convention, to attend this convention, does not get you a ballot. There's a separate, you have to fill out a separate form for a ballot. There's the reasons why I'm not going to go into it. Oh, also, everybody should grab a pen and paper if you're on the phone, because for the folks on the phone, I'm going to be giving you some instructions that you're going to want to write down, because you won't be able to see what I put in the chat. So yeah, again, if you're on the phone, please grab a pen and paper, because I'm going to be giving you a phone number. All right, so as I said, registering for the convention does not get you a ballot. In order to get a ballot, you need to fill out the ballot request form. And the ballot request form, folks who are, please don't anybody post in the chat for a while, because I need to put all of this in the chat. You're going to be going to the ballot request form, which is at bit.ly/2022 ballot request. That's with a capital B and a capital R. I just put in the chat, and that's going to be where you're going to request your ballot. Then once you fill that out and we verify that like you're a real person and you're not like somebody submitting 50 different ballot requests under different names, we'll send you your ballot. Your ballot is going to be emailed to you from something called OpaVote No Reply. OpaVote is the name of the service that runs it, runs the election for us. We need you to please check your spam folder and your promotions folder. What we found last year was a lot of folks' ballots were winding up in their spam folders or their promotions folder, as were like other communications from us, including ones saying check your spam and promotions folder for your ballot. So really need everybody here to please check your spam and promotions folder when you're so that you get your ballot. And then for folks who do not have internet access, you will be eligible to get a paper ballot. And there are two ways to do that. The option one is someone can fill out a form for you at bit.ly/2022 paper ballot request with a capital P, capital B, and a capital R. So that's one option. The other option is to call the Berkeley Tenants Union at 510-982-6696. I'm going to repeat that number once more, 510-982-6696, and provide the full name and spelling, full address and phone number of the person who needs a paper ballot. If you're calling, please make sure to speak loudly and clearly when leaving the voicemail. And I'm going to repeat that phone number just one more time to be absolutely safe. 510-982-6696. Ballot requests must be submitted by Friday, July 8th at 11:59 p.m. And then once you have your ballot, it must be submitted by Friday, July 15th at 11:59 p.m. Both of these deadlines are the same, whether you're casting an electronic ballot or a paper ballot. For people casting paper ballots, you will submit your ballot by bringing it to Grassroots House, which is located at 2022 Blake Street, Do not mail your ballot. Additional instructions on how to submit a paper ballot will be included in the paper ballot packet. We're asking that folks please only request a paper ballot, like if you don't have internet access, or are really not good with a computer. It is a bit of a hassle for us to get people paper ballots. We're hoping a lot more folks are comfortable over these past 2 years doing stuff online. That being said, for folks who just really don't feel comfortable casting electronic ballot because you feel too out of your depth, please do not hesitate to request a paper ballot.
Thank you, Matthew, very much. Thank you, Matthew.
And then the last thing is, this is what once you open your ballot, for those of you voting electronically, this is what your ballot will look like. You'll scroll to the bottom. You will add these to add people. You can remove people. The order will be randomized, and then you must make sure you hit this green vote button at the end so your ballot is cast. And then once you do that, it'll go to a new screen saying you've voted. It's loading too slowly, and we don't want to wait for this to load up. Thank you all. So yes, happy voting.
Thank you, Matthew, very much. Okay. And just a reminder to the audience, please submit your questions, what you want to ask of the candidates in the Q&A function located at the bottom of the screen. Okay, now what we've been waiting for, meeting the 7 candidates running for this year's progressive slate. In the chat, I am putting the order in for the candidates let me start over again. The order the candidates had for the presentation was selected at random. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. The 2 minutes include any speakers introducing the candidates, if there are any. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Sylvia Bertha Chapman, who is running for the slate. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Can I have 1 minute to add all the candidates?
Okay, add all the candidates, please. Sylvia starts first.
Eric, if you could help me to do this, that would be very helpful.
While you're doing that, I'm going to be timing candidates that are speaking. I will be putting in a 1 minute left, a 30-second left, and time in the chat.
Okay, and then I will also be following that, and hopefully people will stick to the time. Okay, can we start with Sylvia, Matthew?
Yes, there might be 1 or 2 candidates to add,
Well,
but I think we'll be good.
let's start first with Sylvia, and then you could put the other candidates on.
Okay. Are you guys ready for me?
I think we're ready for you, Sylvia.
Okay.
When you're ready to go.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening, BTU Rent Convention panelists and fellow Berkeley tenants. Now, my name is Sylvia Chapman Derensberg. You can get rid of that Bertha. I'm running for the Berkeley Rent Board to represent all Berkeley tenants. I'm currently part of the Berkeley Tenants Union Steering Committee and Friends of Adelaide, and I'm a long-time Berkeley tenant. And I'm an assistant for a nonprofit for a sustainable wage for seniors. And my background is 18 plus years working for nonprofits. And my many roles include organizing, strategizing, training, and ledge visiting responsibilities to provide or sustain affordable housing. And before then, I worked in corporate America as legal, medical, and insurance, navigating multi-system processes. My life experience as a divorced single parent of color, raising 3 small children, I do not theorize disparities. I have lived them. Now, what I don't know, I'm willing to learn and find the answers. This professionalism is what I will bring to the Berkeley Rent Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we go to Vanessa Danielle Marrero.
Good evening. Mi nombre es Vanessa Danielle Marrero. I'm a public school advocate serving diverse communities for over 20 years. This is K-12 community colleges, nonprofits, and advocacy organizations. I believe in affordable housing and that it is a civil liberty for all individuals with exceptionalities like my children, the aged tenants, communities of color of which I'm a part of, educators and students across all educational segments, which just scrape by and often have to live in their cars because they cannot afford to live in Berkeley. I moved to Berkeley over 18 years ago because it exemplified a city where all belong and all can thrive, and it represents the values of justice, peace, and innovation. And over the past years, our city has become more market-driven than ever before. And with inflation at an all-time high, we must make a concerted effort to keep Berkeley affordable for all people, especially vulnerable communities and communities of color. Berkeley is an incredible city, a city that values education, diversity, intersectionality, which is known all around the world for research and acts of social justice and civil rights. And now is a critical time to focus on ensuring that we sustain a strong rental ordinance, such as other measures and rental control properties, so that our educators, students, individuals with exceptionalities can remain housed. I am a Latina public school educator, and I'm a woman. I am your candidate, and I have a track record of advocacy, public sector, multifaceted management, and a passion for all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. Next, we go to Della Moran.
Hoping everything works. So my name is Della Moran, and I am a formally trained community organizer. And my first campaign ever was in affordable housing in the city of Chicago. And I, with the team, successfully saved over 16,000 homes on the south side of Chicago. That was in the year 2004. Since then, I have continued to be active in the social justice movement, including affordable housing, land use. I also got into urban farming and agriculture. And the agriculture is what brought me to California. So I've been in California since 2006, and then in Berkeley since 2017. And my experience here in Berkeley as a tenant, I have seen the changes that are happening very quickly in the city. And of course, because of my organizing background in affordable housing, I recognize the signifiers of gentrification, and I see them all around. But I've also, as a tenant, experienced what Ms. Simon Weisberg referred to as the loopholes that landlords and or property owners can fall into in Berkeley. On one point, the ordinances and protections are so robust, but if you're in that a tenant or resident in that loophole area, there is there's really a lack of support within the city and the city services to support. So I'm here, my interest is in closing those loopholes and of course, increasing the amount of affordable housing for low income, moderate income, and to also balance out the rate of development across Berkeley so that certain neighborhoods are not more impacted than others. I feel like there was one more thing I was gonna say. I guess I'll close there.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we go to Nagin Mosaed. Okay, next up is Nagin Mosaed.
It's possible. I thought I added her. I don't see her up here. I know she's on the call though. It is possible that I.
Okay, then let me go next to Solly Alpert.
She's here. Hold on. I'm adding. She seems to have possibly fallen off temporarily. Maybe she's having internet trouble. Oh, I see. Oh no, I see her. There we go. Let me.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Wait, you are? Okay. Can you hear us?
Nagin, did you want to show your video?
you
We heard you for a second just now. After
Do you hear
after
me?
Leah spoke.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm
I'm
Nagin
gonna
Mossad, the owner of Berkeley Community Physical Therapy, a clinic in downtown Berkeley, which has been in operation for 35 years. Over the past decade, I've helped thousands of Berkelians regain their functional mobility and move forward with their lives. My team and I have kept the clinic financially solvent through the pandemic by balancing the needs of the less fortunate with private cash pay clients. This balancing act requires treating patients from all walks of life, understanding and respecting my employees' needs, and fulfilling my critical fiduciary responsibilities. By communicating my values and objectives, I recently raised $20,000 for back COVID rent owed to a former landlord. I will bring these skills to the slate if elected. Rent-controlled housing is one of the most important services a community can offer its residents because housing is a human right. Housing must not be dedicated to the growth of wealth. Rather, it must be balanced with preserving the life of the community. Many of my clients have lived through eviction and wholesale displacement. Their agony has driven me to advocacy. Too few among them know their rights or the special protections that Berkeley provides through its just cause eviction, tenant protections, and rent control laws. I am committed to enforcing these laws and expanding rent control to single-family homes being upzoned from the passage of SB 9 and 10. Consider my unique standing in this community. Each year, I serve 1,000 new patients and hundreds of returning ones. Thus, in 12 years, I have met with, touched, and healed more than 10,000 Berkelians. These are the people I serve. I know them, and they know me. I feel the pulse of our streets, and that is the foundation for legitimate representation. I know what's going on and what's not going well. Our opponents are presently studying our weaknesses and taking note of what we do to pass legislation countering the protections that Berkeley offers its tenants and working class families. Thus, we need to be vigilant. We need an equitable pro-tenant slate. A woman, a minority, a business owner, a homeowner, a tenant, a single mother, and a healthcare worker who fights for justice is the right choice.
Thank you, Nagin. Next, we go to Rent Board Commissioner Solly Alpert.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Solly Alpert. I'm honored to be serving in my second year as the Vice Chair of the Berkeley Rent Board. Professionally, I work as a legislative assistant at the Berkeley City Council, where I specialize in tenants' rights, labor protections, affordable housing, and open and transparent government. And I'm also proud to be a steward with SEIU 10-1, representing my fellow legislative assistants who I organized into the Cities Union in 2019. I want to start out by saying that I think recent events at the Supreme Court illustrate really painfully that our institutions of government across the country are failing. And they're failing because they were never intended to serve poor and working class people, people of color, tenants, and so many groups that are increasingly asserting their and our rights and power in our society. And as working people attempt to seize these institutions, we can watch as they break themselves to prevent us from getting that power. And I think in a society that's fundamentally been engineered from the top to bottom to serve the rich and powerful, I think that rent control fundamentally serves to reorient the balance of power away from landlords, from those who own property, and turn it over to workers and tenants. And as a commissioner, I've worked to further that shift by pushing for changes to the ordinance that bring protections to as many new tenants as possible who haven't benefited from our protections, and to strengthen protections for those who already have them. For example, I'm currently working pushing for policies that would allow us to create as many new rent-controlled units as possible, despite the limits of state laws like Costa-Hawkins. And speaking of Costa-Hawkins, awful state laws for tenants show just how important our local institutions are, particularly the Rent Board. When our legislature, with representing a tenant supermajority state, has 30 landlords in it, but only 3 tenants, we know we can't count on Sacramento to save us. And so I've been proud to be able to work to coordinate efforts between the Rent Board and the council on protecting tenants and bringing more protections and rights to those folks in our community. And it would be my honor to be renominated by the Berkeley Tenant Convention, by Berkeley's tenants, to serve another term advocating for our rights as renters at the Rent Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Ida Martinak.
Good evening. I'm Ida Martinak and having trouble with my mouse. I'm from Croatia and came to this country in my early 20s, just before war broke out at home. Initially, I lived with my ex-husband, whom I met in Sweden, and the Frederick Douglass housing project in New York City. And that was quite an interesting experience. I was quite shocked having moved from Sweden to America, where I thought, growing up on Hollywood propaganda, that everything would be so shiny and new and modern, to see a very dilapidated infrastructure and a very sorry situation that so many people live in. However, living in the projects was also a great insight into what's possible, that the public housing that I don't know why we don't have it anymore, why it's not being built. It's a great thing for working class people to be able to afford livable, clean and safe housing in a great city like New York or in Berkeley. That would be wonderful. So I'm licensed to practice law, and I'm a civil servant. I'm not practicing law, but I'd like to put it to good use. And I feel that being on the rent board would enable me to put my experience and my knowledge to good use to help Berkeley tenants to keep the rent lower and not to let it run away. And as a single mom, I've moved many, many times. So I know the struggles all too well, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ida. And next and the final candidate is Mari Mendonça, current rent board commissioner.
Okay, navigating all my buttons here. Good evening. So I wanted to thank everyone and extend my deepest appreciation for all of the hard work, time, and commitment that everyone has given to facilitate the process. It is important to have this community process in which the community gets an opportunity to select a slate that represents the deepest values that the rent ordinance and the right to housing provides for our community. I wanted to actually be present tonight to let everyone know and thank you for the opportunity to have been able to go through this process up to this point. As everyone knows, we've recently been redistricted in our districts, and I have currently been redrawn into District 8. And so I began with the rent board process to run again, but had been contemplating whether or not I wanted to run for council and represent the district that I have been moved into. And I guess I would just share with you all, I started my grassroots real deep organizing with Friends of Adeline in the community of South Berkeley, District 3, where I was previously. And through that participation and organizing that we have done together in community, I have become a member of the Housing Advisory Commission, the Resident Advisory Board for the Berkeley Housing Authority, and currently serving a 2-year term of being elected on the Rent Board following an appointment, filling the seat of another member who had to move out of Berkeley. And actually colleague Christina Murphy, who I was very proud to be following and standing on her shoulders. So I am sharing with you all tonight that my vision is just, and my commitment to my community is taking me further. And I am going to go ahead and run for District 8. One of the things that I wanted to share is that in my experience, the past few years being on an elected body, but many years being organizing in the community and advocating, I have seen that there are a lot of challenges and a lot of changes that we can see that are needed systemically. And I got to witness a depth of struggle in our city structurally, systemically, and politically that has divided much of our community rather than building and bringing us together. So I just wanted to thank you all for being able to participate in this process up to this point, and just let you know that I am going to change direction and run for City Council in District 8 and bring our community together.
Thank you, Mari. That's sad news for the Rent Board, but thank you very much. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the Q&A portion of the convention. Candidates will have 1:30 to answer a question. I've put in, so I put in the chat for the candidates and for the host to see the order. So we have 1:30, and the first question is going to come from the Center for Independent Living. And if Emma could introduce herself, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Martin. I'm the Systems Change Coordinator here at the Center for Independent Living. I use she, hers pronouns, and just as a visual description, I'm a white cis woman with brown hair, white hoops in, and in my background, you'll see logos of all of our different organizations who helped put together this tenants convention this evening. And so we've received so many incredible, compelling questions in both the chat and in the Q&A box. And so I will be uplifting a question from an audience member. And this question, I think, yeah, really, really close to our work at the CIL and also to what other candidates have spoken to in their questionnaires, but I think important for the audience to hear as well. And this question writes, what would you do to increase the economic and racial diversity and eliminate displacement of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people from Berkeley? Again, what would you do to increase the economic and racial diversity and eliminate displacement of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people from Berkeley?
Okay, it's in the chat, but thank you. And the first candidate is Ida Martinac. You have 1:30.
Right. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, the Rent Board doesn't have limitless power, but I would imagine that fighting to keep rent control, to expand rent control, to also make all new development include higher percentage of apartments for lower income people, that those would be some of the things I would likely do. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Sorry, the screen is.
Yes. Are you done?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know specific mechanisms really. It's something that I'd have to study as I go along.
Okay, thank you. Just a heads up to the candidates, please be careful, do not share your screen. Next, we go to Vanessa Danielle Marrero. And if you want to repeat the question, it's in the chat.
Okay, I understand the question. Thank you, Paola. I think there's a few things. One is Berkeley as a city really needs to take a proactive stance to pass TOPA. I think that TOPA would assist us with eliminating disproportionality and further gentrification, especially as it relates to individuals of color like myself. The other is, what I've seen, there's several committees that the Rent Board has. My interest is to really develop a committee around racial equity. I think that these are issues that need to be addressed in a very focused and intentional way. in a way that would include data-informed processes, conversations that are provocative, that ask questions, that intend to offer change and make change in the Berkeley community. Years ago, many years ago, this community was very diverse and had individuals of color, and we are, the percentage of that has decreased, especially for Black and Latinos. And I personally relate with this as a Berkeley tenant of a rent-controlled building with rent-controlled babies for over 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Sylvia Chapman.
Thank you, Paola. Well, being a Berkeley resident of BIPOC or Black and Brown community, I am a community person. One, I support TOPA and other long-term housing programs, but also what I'm seeing is that the Black and Brown community have consistently bowed out of the voice they have. I would promote voting, and I'm about going to the community and talking to people and helping them realize their voice. I have worked with families where they didn't get the medical care they needed. And then I did the system process where one of my friends in the community was dying of cancer and she didn't know how to get the medical care. And also a friend that was being put out of her apartment. So talking to people and helping them realize their voice through cooperatives, through TOPA, and through not supply and demand, as Chair Leah Weiss-Brown said, because we can build as many houses as we can, but being of color, that access, just cause, not using re-entry issues to block Black and Brown people from housing. So these are initiatives that we need to make the community aware of, empower the community to know their rights. So that's how I would stabilize the population that is slowly being told to move on from Berkeley.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, we go to Negin Mosaed.
Can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Basically, you're talking about gentrification. And I believe that gentrification is not an individual consumer that's the problem moving into the market space. It's actually the core of our economic system and capitalism. And what we have to do is build a movement. We have to build our tenants unions. We have to use that anti-eviction mapping project that thankfully the Rent Board did and show all of our elected leaders what is happening in this community, how people are being pushed out, how can we protect them? We need to continue with building support for TOPA. We need to build a movement that can't be evicted and can't be shut down. And that movement will lead to the protection of the rights of the individuals that are tenants here or who have are working here, they need housing. That's how we do it.
Thank you very much. Next is Council Rent Board Commissioner Solly Alpert.
Thank you. I think there's two aspects, two sides to this point. One is stabilizing the community that we have here now and making sure that people are not displaced from their homes, that people are not forced out of their homes. And the other is providing new opportunities, new affordable, deeply affordable, intentionally affordable opportunities for people to live. And so on the stabilizing side, I think one of the things that I've been advocating for and I hope to continue to advocate for is special protections, higher standards, more restrictive standards on development when it's taking place on sites that have tenants or recently had tenants. That we know that in particular, those are the situations where we need to be careful and really take our time to make sure that people are not being abused or displaced. I also, as people have said, TOPA, I think is another great opportunity. I'm happy to have just sent a letter with the vice chair or with the chair calling on the council to take that up imminently, and have been working closely with the advocates on strategies at council to how to get that to the council floor. But I also think that on the new opportunity side, TOPA can also serve there in taking units that are currently market. And when we work with co-ops and land trusts convert them into affordable housing. I also think we need to push a lot more strongly for the public acquisition of land. We know that there are opportunities the city can take advantage of to buy land when it is low cost instead of allowing it to stay in the private market and then just forever increase in price. So making sure that we're taking all advantages we can and all the opportunities we can to take things out of that market dynamic, which drives that displacement, and bring it into the community use, public use, the best use for the common good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next is Della Moran.
Yes, so and I would agree with what some of the candidates said in supporting TOPA. I believe it's important to keep the current residents housed and obviously giving them a first right to purchase their home before it goes on the market would also bring them up in the, not just from tenants, but bring them up to ownership. I would encourage cooperative ownership education programs so that BIPOC people and residents can learn how to purchase a property. But also, I also want to see the evolution of these type of models. I heard someone mention land trust, but I don't see a lot of diversity in the land trust, nor the cooperative movements. So I would really start an education campaign, and I'm not talking about like, a weekend workshop, but bringing people through like a cohort, maybe 9 months of education where they might be then going, the idea is to buy properties together. I would focus on, of course, BIPOCs buying, like for example, smaller properties, even duplexes, up through larger apartment complexes and future developments of affordable housing. I would like to see the BIPOC affordable housing in BIPOC affordable landowners and developers' hands. I would also support the right to return, making it a priority so that the residents that have been displaced from Berkeley do have first access and choice to the new affordable housing units as they are built. And so I would also do what I could to end the vacancy in the units so that those properties can be back available for others. Check.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we go to the second question of the evening. And the question is going to come from the Young Democratic Socialists of UC Berkeley. Again, the names of the candidates have been switched in the order. I've placed them in the chat. And go ahead, Young Democratic Socialist of UC Berkeley, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Eric, the Comm Secretary of Cal YDSA. So I'm also going to be pointing a question from the Q&A section here. It is, do you have, what would you say are your unique contributions that you would bring to the Rent Board Commission? And in these dire times, what would you identify as your primary objective as a commissioner? And I'm going to post that in the chat there.
Great. It starts off with Solly Alpert.
Sure. I mean, I think I have a couple of things that I bring and have brought to the board. One, as a union steward for 10 to 1, which is also the union that represents Rent Board workers, I've been able to help and sometimes bridge the gap and make sure that our workers at the boards, that their rights are being respected and that we're working with them, our management is working with them cooperatively. As a legislative assistant, I've worked really hard to try and make sure that the council is receiving and accepting the recommendations of the board and not just, as a body with limited power, we rely a lot on our ability to influence council and what they put on the ballot and what they do. And so I've been working hard to try and make sure that the council receives and accepts those recommendations, not just takes them and puts them off to the side. And so that's one of the things I've been working on as well. In these times, what even to say? We're living in unprecedented times in a lot of ways that are not happy. And I think that my priority for these, for the short term for these contexts is stability. We've managed to do that well in Berkeley, given the resources with our emergency ordinance that limits evictions. We know that a time is going to come at some point when that will be lifted, and we need to delay that as long as possible and make sure that we have as many programs and supports in place so that when that time does come, people are prepared, people have the resources they need, that people are not going to fall through the cracks. I think there are a lot of other things we need to work on expanding the ordinance, on expanding the board's powers and authority, but that's, for the short term, for these times, the most important thing.
Thank you, Sully. Next is Della Moran.
Yes, I think one of my unique qualities is my experience as a tenant here in Berkeley as a Black woman. A lot of things that I hear might presented either at the city council meetings or rent board meetings or statistics and things that people experience through words, but I actually live them. And so from that experience, I believe I could also pick out or have maybe a forward awareness when things are presented to me, already can cut to the chase of the issue. Additionally, I'm on the board of a national nonprofit, NASCO, which is a cooperation of 44 co-ops in the United States and plus 24 in Canada. So it's actually international. So I'm a part of a functioning organization. And my personal projects within that have been a needs assessment survey around equity and anti-racism needs for co-ops. And not just co-ops, but that's the market that I did my research in. But I hope to use, I'm doing research across the country and also in Berkeley, working with the co-ops here in Berkeley, and I'm doing a comparative analysis. So I also bring data analysis and research and survey needs assessment. Check.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Next, we go to Vanessa Marrero.
Yes, hi, thank you for the question. It's really important to think about this specifically. One of the things that I can share is my track record. Really simply put, if you Google me, I get the job done. And my intention is to, one, hear from community. I want to be in office hours. I've already knocked on hundreds of doors in my neighborhood as well as in other districts. I think it's really important that we have a organizational management at the board level that is collaborative, that is action oriented, that is transparent, that stewards board governance in a way that will, again, make sure that we not only sustain what we have now, right, but also get to other communities of color that are actually not being served. And they do exist. These are educators. These are individuals with exceptionalities. These are the elderly. The list goes on. And I do see that as a pervasive issue that I really want to focus on. And again, I want to do that in a way that focuses a structured committee that will address issues locally, but also look at the state, what the state is doing, and how can Berkeley be that model, right, across the state so that we could have rent control for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Nagin Mosaed.
Okay. Most importantly, of course, during the pandemic, we went through a very difficult period in the clinic's life where we lost our lease, we couldn't pay rent, we had to see the patients, I had to let my employees go. So I was juggling a gazillion of things. And I was one of the only small clinics that is still in operation. The mostly have all sold out to corporations, and that is something that I refuse to do. I refuse to sell out the interests of my community to corporate entities. And I believe that the struggle for housing intersects with many, many other struggles. I've been an advocate throughout my 12 years here, dealing with so many different issues: police brutality, racism, immigration, fair wages. And all of those, I've been at the city council, pushing council members, organizing community to show up, speak out, and be heard. And this is the way we continue. If I get elected on the rent board, I will bring this energy, this understanding of the fabric of our community to the rent board, and hopefully do a lot of good. And I also have been involved in lawsuits with landlords. I've answered phones for the Berkeley Tenants Union, discussing with tenants how they can stay in their houses through this critical period. And I feel that I have become a constant advocate. That's my next strength. And that's about it.
Thank you very much. Next is Ida Martinek.
Hey, there's some really many wonderful ideas, and I wouldn't want to, repeat them, but definitely like to build on some. It's become very apparent in these absolutely dark times, the best and the worst of times, that building community is really key to surviving and thriving in what's coming. And one of the things that the thing that brought me to California from New York was to study environmental law and to really focus on renewable energy. And I feel that we live in a coastal town, and with the every year ever more dire effects of climate change, I feel that tenants in particular are at the mercy of the utility companies and the landlords. And I would love to work on finding ways for landlords to provide solar panels, especially on the larger units, or some such way for tenants to be able to, electrify the house and use pay less for the ever increasing energy costs. And also the city needs to prepare, since we are at the coast, at the very almost on sea level. So we need to really start preparing for the effects of climate change, for the rising sea level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then for the last candidate, Sylvia Chapman.
Well, thank you. What I feel my unique quality is, I've worked regional. I was a civil rights activist for present equity, Darrensburg versus MTC for underserved communities. And now I'm learning on a local level. I love looking at policy and see how it trickles down to the community. I agree with my fellow rent board candidates about stabilization and mobilization. It takes both facets to get this done. My campaign model is to breathe, to live and stay, the right of return, and to prosper. To prosper, we need communication. And that's what I do. I have, I hate to say, years of life experience as a divorced single mother, dealing in urban sprawling, working competitive wage jobs, and seeing some benefit and some don't. Sustainable wage, rent control. Those are my backgrounds that I bring in looking at policy. I have collected signatures in my neighborhood, talking to people one-on-one and seeing policies. And one of my biggest beefs is that state policy, local policy, one conflicts with the other. I want to bring that uniformity, state, well, federal, state, regional, and local. And I sent a letter to Nancy Skinner to have her talk. I don't believe in supply and demand. I believe in listening to the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, for question number 3, we now turn to Berkeley Citizens Action. They have a question. Again, the order of the candidates has been shuffled, and I'm going to put it right here in the chat. We're going to start out. Go ahead, Berkeley Citizens Action.
Okay, this is Julianne Alberti for Berkeley Citizens Action.
Former Rent Board Commissioner too.
Former Rent Board Commissioner and voted for Gus Newport and that long. This is what happens when you stay around in life this long. I am very impressed by the people who are our candidates. I think that it's tremendous to see so many people willing to come out and do things to make it better for everybody. This is the question we have. The groups that sponsor the tenant convention every 2 years maintain an active presence in Berkeley political life, seeking to promote progressive policies, legislation, and candidates. And these include Berkeley Tenants Union, Friends of Adeline, the East Bay Democratic Socialists of America, Our Revolution East Bay, the Young Democratic Socialists of America, UCB Healthy Black Families, Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club, Berkeley Citizens Action, Alameda County Green Party, Gray Panthers, the Center for Independent Living, SEIU 1021, and Berkeley Progressive Alliance. Here's the question. As a political candidate, what relationship do you have to these organizations now? And if endorsed by the tenant convention and elected to the rent board, how do you envision working with them, strengthening the coalition to make the changes you all sincerely believe in?
Thank you. The first respondent is Nagin Mosaed.
She needs to unmute.
Thanks, Judy Ann. As you know, I'm a Berkeley Citizens Action member and I'm a Friends of Adeline member. I am a member active in the DSA, and I'm also connected to the Center of Independent Living through my work as Center for Independent Living. And I believe that my constant connection to activism and all these organizations that I've been in touch with not only will give me that background and alliance with their needs and discussions that we've had all these years that have helped me grow and be who I am and have the values that I do, but I will also be constantly connected with them, making decisions as a rent board member and ensuring the right of all of Berkeley citizens and committed to them and not to power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Solly Alpert.
Thank you very much. So for a few of the organizations I actually serve currently as the administrative coordinator for the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club, which is kind of like being the chair, except without the work, but not the title for Wellstone. And for obviously, as I mentioned before, I'm a steward of SEIU 10-1 after unionizing my colleagues at the city council with my colleague Sandy Barnard in 2019. I'm a proud member of DSA, have been since Bernie ran the first time and have been involved in that. I've been a little less involved since COVID, but I'm hoping to get back, hit the ground running. And yeah, and I'm a member of Berkeley Progressive Alliance as well. I think that the coalition would benefit from stronger coordination cooperation between the conventions. I think we've done a very good job, and the proof is in the pudding. We've done a very good job over the last 20 years plus of running tenant candidates, strong, progressive, pro-rent control candidates. But I think creating those institutions and links between those organizations in the interim, not just to elect those candidates, but to support them in the legislation they're writing and to hold them accountable and make sure that those organizational ties and individual ties perpetuate in the intervening period is important. And so one thing that we've discussed before, and I really want to make sure we do before the next convention, is set up a more permanent structure and a more permanent institution to ensure that those things persist in the intervening period.
Okay, thank you. Next is Della Moran.
Yes, so I mostly work with Friends of Adeline as my connection to the I don't want to overspeak, but as one of my connections to the community. But through that connection, I also connect with Healthy Black Families and other organizations. So I know about their Equitable Black Berkeley campaigns. But the question is what I would do. I would continue to listen to the and meet with different organizations and to talk to them about how to get support from their demographics and people. But additionally, like with my background in community organizing, I'm having like so many thoughts all coming in my head at once. But so I talk to the whole neighborhood and the community all the time. And I'm always in this role, like an outreach role. When I say always, I mean, it's natural for me, it's my state. So I would continue that. And I also have connections again to like Berkeley Students Co-op, which is just a connection to the student body. So I would see myself as able to cross multiple barriers and borders, boundaries, social boundaries, in order to gather input and support from many demographics. Check.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Now we go to Sylvia Chapman.
I'm sorry, I hit Joe move. Well, in the community, I'm part of Friends of Adeline. I'm part of Berkeley Tenants Union Steering Committee. And what I bring is a perspective. I'm learning. I went from survival to thrival. And so right now, and that's true, I struggled. I was homeless. I worked or talked with Consider the Homeless. I was a houseless representative for Women's Daytime Drop-In Center. So I was in the community, bringing stabilization on a personal level and bringing stabilization to my life. And now for 10 years, I'm giving back what I got from Berkeley community, from a grassroots, talking to people, and then joining with other communities. I am part of Friends of Adeline, bringing the right to return, doing outreach in the community, help coordinate a community outreach at the flea market. I'm bringing that to the rent board. I'm bringing that understanding of how laws filter out every day in the community. I want to bring that to the rent board and then develop policy that reaches to all the community, people of color, and all struggling people in the community, especially the homeless population that have been severely displaced. That's what I plan to bring to the rent board.
Thank you very much. Our next person is Vanessa Marrero.
Yes, thank you. I'm really proud to be a part of the BTU. I have been a union member and activist for my entire adult life and believe that we need strong labor in rent as well. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for me to be more a part of this community. As well as I've worked and been a part of CTA engagements at the state level, eliminating the prison to pipeline, and really ensuring that we have equitable practices within education. And as you know, that does touch the work that we do here. I want to make sure that we actively recruit candidates of color, candidates with exceptionalities to be a part of the work that we are doing, and that we use cross-sector connections to build on the network that we already have so that we have representation of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sylvia Chapman. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've already.
I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Next is Ida Martinek. Apologize.
Hi. So I'm listening to the great ideas, and I find myself wondering, how do we really define community? It seems like, people are talking about community a lot, but in my experience, when I moved from Europe to the States, I'm having a hard time feeling this community. Capitalism is really doing everything, to divide and distract and demoralize us. And, we all live in our little silos, and whatever little bit of community we eke out, it's like a precious little flower growing out of concrete cracks. And I'm not sure. It's been a question that's been tormenting me for years now, how to overcome this, how to really, I can't just knock on someone's door and be like, hey, do you have a cup of sugar I can borrow? I mean, barely, but that was the norm back home. And I think this whole ultra-capitalist system is really, and the corporatization of our city is really killing community. So building community gardens, building spaces where people can hang out and talk, I think is really important. And right now, People's Park is under attack, and all these other parks. So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and then we're gonna do one more question, and we go to Friends of Adeline. Again, the order of the candidates has been shuffled. And so go ahead, Friends of Adeline, ask your question.
Okay, is Willie here or not? I haven't seen Willie on the line, so I will ask the question. Some of this has been.
Do you want me to help you get Willie, or do you want to ask it, Gene?
Gene's gonna ask it.
No, I'll ask it just so we can move on.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Some of this has been covered, but I want a slightly different approach. Tenants in Berkeley are all facing the same problems of rising rents, threats to their health and safety, and landlord greed. The state and local priorities that are enabling widespread development promoted by the development industry has resulted in the decimation of the Black and brown population of Berkeley, with the percentage of African Americans declining from about 25% to 7% over the last 25 years. What will you do as a rent board commissioner to oppose what is happening? What will you do that will enable those tenants facing displacement and losing their homes by high rents and deteriorating living conditions to fight back, with the focus on their fighting back?
Okay, thank you very much. The first candidate to speak on this is Vanessa Marrero.
Thank you. I have over 27 years of racial equity work that I've done both in New York City and here in California. And I'll just mention a few things. One is Measure MM is critical to ensuring that we do have registrations. We need to really ensure that we use data to inform our practices. That cannot be underscored. We need to make sure that we use the Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act, that we could get that passed to reduce anti-placement in housing. We need to look at our committees and really identify committees that will focus on this work throughout the years. We also need to recruit individuals of color to commissioner positions so that they can represent the people that they serve. And the last thing, the most importantly, is we need to be with the community, right? It's really easy to, be on a board level, but we need to listen, walk the streets, knock on doors, understand the needs. And those are the things that I would do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Sylvia Chapman.
Thank you. Well, I definitely agree with Vanessa. We need to get the community involved. And part of that is knocking on the doors or talking to your neighbors, integrating it. I have to use an example. I had a neighbor, and he was talking about how bad the people were in People's Park because we're not framing the conversation. They get it from other people who don't live the situation, whether it's the real estate, whether it's the property owners. So again, we have to engage in the community. And for brown and Black people, again, we need to stabilize so they can mobilize. So again, going out, talking to people and connecting them, talking to communities. I've been involved with SIL. I've been involved with Healthy Black Families. I'm part of Friends of Adeline at BTU. It's not just I put on my community face one day or I put on my program analysis face one day. I'm walking it every day. If I hear in the conversation, right across from the park, they have a lot of functions. I go to them. I go to community events, and then I'm framing the conversation where people get connected with what they need. And then whether it's TOPA, whether it is rent control, whether it's just understanding what's going on in your building.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next on is Solly Alpert.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. One thing that I've been trying to do at the board is expand the board's authorization to issue fines on landlords when they violate our ordinances and other city laws. And right now, the board has two main ways it can compel, penalize people. It can reduce people's rent when they reduce habitability, and it can fine people only for failure to register with the board, but otherwise our fining authority is limited. And so I've been working with staff a little bit slower than I would like from staff to expand the rent board's authority so that we can also fine people, for example, when I think we should be able to fine people when their rights under the Tenant Protection Act are violated. And that would give us the ability to really directly intervene in some of these situations and help people stay in their homes. I also think we need to severely limit by right approval and other expedited review for new development when it's on sites that include tenants or that recently included tenants. We know that evicting tenants is a big way of, when development happens, it poses a major risk for the sitting tenants, and we need to slow down and make sure that tenants have the opportunity to raise the problems that are happening and to throw that sand in the gears to make sure that their rights are not violated. An expedite review on lots that include tenants is a major problem, which I think we should avoid. And lastly, I think we need to do a lot better job. This is not so much for the rent board to do, but for the rent board to advocate for the city, to play a more active and direct role in intervening on foreclosures to help tenants purchase their homes when they're foreclosed.
Thank you. Okay. Then next is Della Moran.
Okay, so this question definitely struck a nerve because I have been a tenant who has, addressed habitability issues with the landlord and done the fight back to improve conditions. And I found that it leads to more retaliation and or harassment. And so I would tread lightly with this, with the strategy. And I mean multi-pronged strategy, but I would focus on identifying the lawyers that are engaging in these behaviors. I believe from the rent board's perspective, internal view, that the lawyers engaging in these type of behaviors would be known and easy to identify. I would then also educate the tenants about, or I guess I would make a list of rules that the attorneys would have to abide by in order to not be harassing tenants. And then I would educate tenants about this is what happens. When you get this third letter or the second letter, whatever that action is, this is when you already take action so that things don't progress and that tenants are aware of their rights from early on. But I would also encourage groups to get together, different properties, tenants experiencing similar things. I know of some issues going on in Berkeley, but encourage cross education so that one building might learn from another building's struggle. And so there could be education between tenants and residents to fight back against the harassment and retaliation.
Thank you, Della. Next is Ida Martinak.
So I wasn't at first sure if I was going to run or not, but then I came upon an article about NX Ventures from Texas buying up all the corners in my neighborhood here. And it really freaked me out. Basically, Berkeley's being turned into this gray corporate dystopia, and it won't be Berkeley anymore. And only the very rich will be able to live here if things go on the current trajectory. And as Soli mentioned, the rent board has limited powers. So I forget who it was who mentioned that earlier. I think Della, or I'm not sure, that building a movement and organizing around this, organizing all people in Berkeley to rise up, at least the non-corporate androids, to save Berkeley from this corporate onslaught. It can't just be isolated organizations or the rent board. It has to be all of us coming together and putting up a fight. And I forgot to mention in my answer to the last question, I am a member of DSA and Our Revolution, and I'm also a steward at SEIU Local 1000. And we've been fighting, state workers have been fighting for GeoPay for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, and the last candidate is Negin Mosaid.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The question is in relation to the state and local legislation and a thing that's happening nationwide and worldwide. This is a situation of commodification of housing due to the predatory forces of capitalism. Doing things at the local level is important, as I've been in the Berkeley Tenants Union and getting to know what the tenants' issues are, answering calls and helping them stay in their houses. But the bigger vision and the way we can stop and counter this movement is to create our own movement. How do we create our own movement just in our single cells? We need to connect nationwide to other tenants unions, to other movements to stop gentrification that are happening in a lot of the the bigger cities throughout America, because that's what capitalism is using to drive their new markets. So we need to stop real estate speculation. We need to stop short-term rental markets, the rental units that they're using Airbnb. Luxury development and market rate development needs to be toned way down. And we need to have direct action to do this, connected with a net all over America. How are you doing it? We're doing it like this. Let's get together and fight these forces that are much stronger than us. That is the only way I think we can succeed.
Thank you, Negin, very much. So that was the 4 questions that were asked. It's 9 o'clock. We're now going to go to the closing statements for the candidates. They have 1 minute to do a closing statement. Again, the names have been shuffled. Let me put the names real quick into the chat. And so for the first person to do the closing statement for 1 minute will be Della Moran.
Okay, well, in closing, I would like to say thank you for having this convention, and thank you to those that carry the spirit of Berkeley for so many years to continue this progressive campaign to move the city in the right direction. I seek to improve Berkeley. I was going to say restore it to what it once was, and that is true, but I know the way gentrification works, the pace at which things work, it's hard to go back. So I hope to build a new future with more equity in housing and more access for tenants and resources, more access to resources for tenants here in Berkeley of all ages and of all incomes and of all abilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we go to Ida Martinak.
I would also like to thank all of you on your selfless work putting all this together. I know it's a lot, and I just feel it every day. I'm dreaming, thinking, sleeping. This fear of this corporate dystopia and climate apocalypse that's happening and ever faster. So, and I really feel that we need to strengthen our community locally, whatever that means, fight capitalism locally through talking to each other, through building community. And I hope to bring some light to this horrible darkness around us and use my background, my educational background, my skills, my connections, my wits, come up with new ideas, brainstorm with people how to build a new world.
Thank you very much. I want to stay close to time. The next candidate is Sylvia Chapman.
Yes, I'd like to thank all of the convention panelists and fellow Berkeley residents and candidates. What I see is not necessarily gentrification, but resegregation, and capitalism or greed fuels it. And it's resegregation by classism and color. And I believe all the aspects that we need to get together on a community level, on a group level, of different unions, of different organizations coming together, and also holding our legislators accountable once we build a foundation and a solidified force. And it starts again with stabilization and mobilization. So I want to say with Friends of Adeline, with the Equity Summit, having these conversations, opening the dialogue, and then connecting people with those who have been there, the past, the present, and the future. Those who have walked it, those who are walking it, and those that will walk it. Thank you.
Next is Solly Alpert.
Thank you. I think we have, oh, that's not me.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for the spotlight.
You're there.
Oh, maybe my screen is lagging, apologies. Thank you. And I think that we have a crisis in Berkeley, obviously, of affordability for tenants, of an eviction crisis we've managed to delay, but we know that's on the horizon. And, I do think that we need to do the unglamorous work at the Rent Board of, tweaks and technical changes and these legal things to make sure that tenants are safe and protected. But alongside that technical work, we also need to contextualize this crisis in its broader context as just one part of a massive crisis in our country that stemmed from a systematic disinvesting in public good, right? We've seen complete abandoning of the principles of government serving public good and instead serving corporate interests. And so we need to, at the same time as we work on these technical side, also work on the broader coalition, the great movement, not just in the United States and across the country. That's part of why, as Chair Weisberg mentioned at the beginning, I wrote and introduced the resolution condemning the evictions in Palestine, because I think these are all part of one struggle. And we need to, while we work on these technical bits, make sure that we're also centering that greater context.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to acknowledge another Rent Board commissioner came into our former Rent Board commissioner, Alejandro Sotovihit. He's in the audience. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go now to Nagin Mosaed.
Aside from being an active member of Friends of Adeline and Berkeley Citizens Action for many years, in the past 2 years, I've extended my advocacy for our tenants through working in the steering committee of the Berkeley Tenants Union. More importantly, I've helped them bring new steering committee members from different backgrounds into this space so that people from all walks of life and different ethnicities can be represented in seats of power. I've gone door to door explaining and getting signatures in support of TOPA and driving that fight forward. Of course, the fight for TOPA passage continues. I've been a member of the BART Summit Coalition, consisting of leaders of multiple community organizations working to pass a vision of 7 stories, contextual design, and 100% affordability, a community vision to build at both of these BART sites. We are continuing our work after our recent small victory so that the total vision can be encompassed and successful. The struggle for housing, again, encompasses many other human rights struggles. And we must be vigilant to connect all of these movements and create and protect democracy and human rights.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we just want to stick to time. So I want to thank everyone for attending here tonight. I just put in the chat where people can actually request their ballot. Remember, you have until July 8th at 11:59 p.m. to request your ballot, and you have until 11:59 p.m. Friday, July 15th to submit your vote. For all of you who's registered.
Paula, can we
so
also
for all of
give
you,
folks...
Matthew, I'm speaking, please. For all of you who've registered to be on the Zoom event and you are confirmed to have met the eligibility criteria for voting, the ballots will be emailed to you using the secure system called the OPA vote system. Following the conclusion of the convention, after you've actually requested your ballot, remember to be checking out on your promotions folder and on your spam folder to make sure you find it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the candidates who decided to go through this system. It is a challenging system, but it is well worth it because we do want candidates who support rent control and good cause for eviction ordinance, and they believe in community.
Paula, you skipped a candidate. Paula, you skipped a candidate. Paula, you skipped a candidate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who did I skip?
Vanessa.
Vanessa.
Oh, Vanessa. Oh, Dios mío, I'm so sorry. Vanessa, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I
Thank
got
you.
ahead of myself. Okay,
It's
go ahead,
okay. Thank you.
Vanessa.
I'm gonna go quickly. My name is Vanessa Danielle Marrero. I believe in true affordable housing as a civil liberty for all. I'm particularly interested and focused on communities of color, individuals with exceptionalities, and those who are elderly. And I think our buildings need to be more accessible. We need to have elevators. We need to have flashing lights in case of an earthquake. I want to be a part of the 4x4 task force when I am elected as Rent Board Commissioner because it is collaborative and it focuses on policies of change. I appreciate all you are doing and thank you for having me be a part of this process.
Thank you very much, and I so apologize for having skipped you. Anyways,
Paula, and I need to clarify
I'd like
what.
to remind everyone to please go to the bit.ly link that was put into in the chat to make sure you could request your ballot. And actually, I see that all the links have been put in there. Want to thank everyone. And
Paula, I just need to clarify one thing you said, which is just to clarify for folks. Registering does not mean registering for this convention does not mean we've automatically verified your identity. Just be aware it might take us a few days. And again, it doesn't mean that like you may be like one of the most active, hyper involved people in like the Berkeley community, but the people who are on the verification task force might happen to be like the spaces that they're in might just be different spaces than you. So if we can't get you your ballot right away, that's just what that means. That like we're just making sure that nobody is trying to dilute your vote. And I also want to emphasize that anybody who is at least 13 years old and fully supports tenants' rights and lives in Berkeley is eligible to vote. That includes non-citizens, includes, I said, people who are minors. Theoretically, someone in jail or prison can vote. You don't have to be, and if you're a student and you're out of town temporarily for summer, you can vote. This is real, yeah. So you're not. So it's not a formal election. So please do vote. Make sure to tell everybody you know to vote. And then just want to one more time, particularly for the folks on the phone, read that phone number for you for how to request your ballot. And that phone number is 510-982-6996. Once again, you're going to be calling the Berkeley Tenants Union at 510-982-6696. Make sure you provide the full name and spelling, full address, and phone number of the person who needs a paper ballot. And again, please, paper ballots just for folks who don't have internet access or maybe are like still using dial-up. We really want to make it much easier for us to do electronic ballots. We can get it to you quicker. And then, yeah, just be aware, it may take us a few days to get people their ballots. So the sooner you submit your request, the sooner we can get your ballot. Please do that.
Thank you.
Just be aware it might take us a couple of days.
Thank you, Matthew. And I want to acknowledge, last but not least, one other Rent Board commissioner that is currently in the audience, and that's Dominic Walker. So thank you, everyone. That's our 2022 Rent Board convention. On to the votes, and let's see will we get a great slate together so we can win in November. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you so much to the committee for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank everyone for participating.
Paula, shall I turn off the record?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
All right, I'll turn off the recording and I will turn off the live stream.
Thank you very much.
Turn off all right, view. All right, let me figure out how to turn off the live. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. And that's why I can't figure it out. Okay.
You can turn off the Zoom.